RMS that challenged the IBC ordinance.
The BJP releases its election manifesto for Gujarat the evening before the first phase of the elections.
Nifty rallies 1% for the second straight day. Oil marketing companies and ITC lead from the front.
The Central Board of Direct Taxes extends the deadline for linking permanent account number or PAN with Aadhaar to the 31st of March.
It's a Brexit breakthrough. The UK and the European Union strike a deal to unlock divorce negotiations. Well, on to the top story tonight. In a rare move, the Indian government moved to take over control of real estate giant Unitech, citing mismanagement and diversion of funds. The NCLT restrained the real estate firm's existing directors from acting as board members and allowed the government to appoint new management. Arpan Chaturvedi sums up all the court action in this report.
In 2016, subsequent to the orders of the NCLT, the government had conducted an investigation into the affairs of the company, and prima facie, they were of the view that there was mismanagement and irregularities were committed in running the affairs of the company. And post that, today the government again came to the NCLT and they said that they basically gave the NCLT an overview of their investigation, and subsequent to that, the NCLT said that prima facie, what the government says, there is a case made out, and then of course they issued the notice to the Unitech company, and as well as they suspended the current directors of the board, and of course asked the government to give some other names that they find fit to be nominated on the board as nominee directors, and of course that will be subject to the approval of the NCLT, and the government has to submit the list of the names by December 20th. Now this hearing was concluded or appeared to have concluded after this order was passed, but post lunch around 2 p.m. Unitech's counsel, senior advocate Ranjit Kumar, again came to the NCLT and told the tribunal that this order needs to be changed or put in abeyance. And to support his argument, what he cited was a previous Supreme Court order which, according to him, says that there should be no coercive action taken against the company. Now, this order was passed when the Supreme Court was hearing the bail plea of the Unitech owners or promoters, Sanjay Chandra. And subsequent to that, of course, that was the point made by Ranjit Kumar that this order should be put in abeyance. But of course, the NCLT did not agree and said that whatever the orders they have passed, that will be subject to the orders of the Supreme Court. And of course, the newly constituted board will also be in and subjected to the direction of the Supreme Court going further.
Well, former Executive Director of SEBI, R.S. Luna, joins us now for a perspective on these developments. Mr. Luna, thank you so much for speaking with us on Prime Time. Do you think that the grounds that the government has cited for the takeover of Unitech are realistic, and would that in effect extend to some of the other companies going through the insolvency process?
Well, certainly, I think Section 241 of the Companies Act very clearly provides that the central government has a right to approach this National Company Act Tribunal, where the company's management is being not run in the interests of the public. So it is prejudicial to the public interest. That is why they have gone to the NCLT, and NCLT has allowed them, considering that the company's affairs are not being run in the interest of public. So I think there's a substantial ground for the central government to move NCLT, and NCLT's order is fairly on sound legal grounds. Yes, I agree that this kind of trend may continue perhaps in some other big firms also. Like, for instance, we know that JP Infra is also a big issue, where that is also for the Supreme Court. And likewise, Amrapali is now again before the NCLT and various courts. I believe last week, UP government that the 12 builders in Noida, they should be arrested because they're delaying the delivery of homes to the investors. So I think overall, there's a lot of focus of the government to come heavily on the builders.
Right, Mr. Luna, you mentioned JP and of course Amrapali as well, and these are big names in the real estate sector. But I would like to get your take on this. Would you say that Well, this particular case, when it comes to Unitech, could be precedent-setting in a lot of ways, and well, this could just be the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that because most of these companies like JP or the Amarpali, which we are talking about, they are almost being run in the same manner. They are all, for instance, in case of JP, the Supreme Court has told them to deposit 2,000 crore rupees, So, I mean, there are similar kinds of issues, and rather there are more number of investors involved in these companies. So I think similar issues going to come up there also.
Just coming back to Unitech, Mr. Luna, this case also attracted a lot of attention because there are 19,000 home buyers. And that is, of course, a sensitive segment in that sense. Perhaps this is why the government felt it had to intervene. What happens to these home buyers? Have their prospects brightened now?
Certainly, I think, for instance, if you look at the Supreme Court's order case of JP Associates, there the Supreme Court, when they're looking at the insolvency and bankruptcy proceedings pending before Allahabad NCLT, and the issue came about the home buyer's interest, and the Supreme Court has very clearly given the directions to the resolution professional that he should come up with the resolution scheme which should clearly take care of the interests of the home buyers. And so even though the IBC code was not providing for this home buyer's interest, but Supreme Court has specifically provided for that. So I think Supreme Court is very clear that the home buyers have a lot of stake in these projects. That this is almost life fund earnings which is invested in this. So they have to be protected.
Right, Mr. Luna, we really appreciate you taking time out and speaking with us at Bloomberg Quint. Now, moving on to our next story, the ordinance amending the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code is facing its first legal hurdle. Punjab-based RMS has challenged the ordinance in Punjab and Haryana High Court. Law firm Chandiok and Associates is representing the petitioner, and RMS had defaulted on loans to the tune of 100 crore rupees. A managing partner at Chandiok and Associates and a lawyer for RMS, Pooja Mahajan, has told Bloomberg Quint, and I quote, the overarching manner in which the ordinance is drafted would have the effect of ousting almost all promoters from the resolution process.
Now remember, RMS had submitted a resolution plan for repaying its lenders just before the IBC ordinance. With this amendment, the promoter now stands ineligible to participate in the resolution process. RMS has challenged the ordinance on two key grounds. One, retroactivity of the ordinance, and two, that the ordinance does not distinguish between a genuine promoter and a willful defaulter. The Punjab and Haryana High Court has issued a notice to the government and posted the matter for hearing in January. It has also granted interim relief to RMS and allowed the resolution professional to continue to be in control and management of RMS. Meanwhile, the Mumbai bench of NCLT has admitted the insolvency pleas filed against Ruchi Soya. Standard Chartered Bank and DBS India filed the insolvency plea. Remember, Ruchi Soya had agreed to sell 51% stake to Devonshire Capital.
Well, it may have taken a long time coming, but it's finally here. A day before Gujarat goes to phase 1 of assembly polls, the BJP has come out with its manifesto. 89 constituencies out of a total of 182 seats will go for polls tomorrow. Releasing the manifesto, Union Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said Gujarat's growth is the highest in India. He also claimed that the Congress manifesto was based on constitutional impossibility and financial improbability.
Now, quick check on the manifestos. The Congress manifesto focuses on 4 major areas: health, housing, education and employment. It promises universal health care, increase in public health budget, redrafting housing policy, construction of 25 lakh new houses, fee regulation in schools and colleges, reservation in private institutions, allowances for the unemployed and creation of self-employment opportunities in MSME sector. Now, moving moving on to the BJP manifesto, the ruling party promises to eradicate poverty, casteism, communalism and dynasticism from the state. It also promises to improve farm incomes, focus on animal welfare and implement laws against cow slaughter to prop up agriculture in the state. For women empowerment, the party intends to set up a fund and provide for free higher education and healthcare. On the jobs front, the party intends to tweak its industrial policies from time to time to improve the employment in the state.
दो वायदे जो उन्होंने किए, एक संवैधानिक दृष्टि से असंभव है. इट्स अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल इम्पॉसिबिलिटी. अगर हम वास्तविकता देखें तो कुछ वायदे ऐसे किए जो वित्तीय दृष्टि से, फाइनेंशियल दृष्टि से असंभव है, इम्पॉसिबल है.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी का ये गुजरात विरोध पत्र गुजरात की जनता को मिलने वाले फायदों के विरोध में है. श्री अरुण जेटली ने समाज के हर वर्ग को मिलने वाली सुविधाओं का भारतीय जनता पार्टी के प्लेटफॉर्म से विरोध किया. जीएसटी यानी गब्बर सिंह टैक्स के आर्किटेक्चर और डिजाइन को भी ठीक करने का विरोध संकल्प पत्र है या गुजरात विरोध पत्र है?
Well, our sister concerned, Quint's Rahul Nair gets you a mood check on the ground from Ahmedabad earlier today. Have a look.
Prime Minister Modi has arrived over here in Nicole, Ahmedabad to continue with the campaigning for the second phase of elections that will happen on 14 December. As you can see, there's a massive turnout over here and people have come from all corners of Gujarat, of Ahmedabad and the surrounding villages to show their support and strength to Modi. Ahmedabad happens to be the bastion for BJP and there's no way they can lose over here, or at least they would want to believe so. But as far as the first phase of polling is concerned, when you talk about districts such as Amreli, Surat, when you talk about Saurashtra and Kutch, when you talk about South Gujarat, there's a lot of animosity towards the BJP and that could turn the tables on the Saffron Party. As of now, BJP is reveling in its support.
Well, political editor at Business Standard, Aditi Fadnis, joins us now for more on the manifestos largely. And Aditi, the big day tomorrow, phase one of the Gujarat Assembly elections. All the polls, largely till the last week of November, showed a neck-and-neck fight. Do you think that situation has changed?
Well, I wouldn't say the situation has changed. I mean, there are the next phase is going to be even bigger. Because I think 96 seats are going for the polls on the 14th. So I don't think the situation has changed, but certainly the Congress has made more inroads into Gujarat than ever before. The BJP should take heed of this onward march. There are legitimate grievances and concerns about what the BJP government has done. This is the only state where the BJP has changed its chief minister after Narendra Modi came to power. So obviously they are also uncertain about how to proceed. So I think it will be good if they do some introspection and also try and ask people what it is that is worrying them, that they are anxious about. There is a degree of anti-incumbency which is, I think, quite natural.
I just want to get in a word on the manifestos, Aditi, because the BJP manifesto was released today on the eve of the election. And a cursory reading of both shows rather motherhood statements. Are either of the parties being very clear about what they're giving the voters?
I think they want to give what is realistic and they want to promise what is doable. It's true that it's motherhood and apple pie kind of statements, but these are actually things which affect the lives of people there. There has been unequal development in Gujarat. It is true, and this is something that Planning Commission before its Niti Aayog incarnation had pointed out to Mr. Modi that issues relating to child welfare, issues relating to nutrition, infant mortality, women's health. These are all issues that Gujarat should be concerned about. Actually, if you look at it, the first Chief Minister of Gujarat who was anointed after Modi left for Delhi, Anandiben Patel, did address many of these issues. But she was derailed because I think the party conspired to get her to derail her agenda. So education, health, these are all very seminal things.
Prime Minister, this also, considering how this election is really playing out with all the dynamics, be it Jignesh Mevani, Alpesh Thakur or Hardik Patel, it seems like, the narrative has changed in Gujarat. Over the last few years, it's been very bilateral per se, and now it seems like, caste plays a key role. How do you see that alliance playing out?
I'm not sure if it is caste. I think it's a sense of bitterness at aspirations which are not being met, and I think it would be a mistake to read it as a caste uprising. These are all young people. The older people in the caste are not protesting like this. They are not asking for that kind of social justice. There is the average income in Gujarat is far higher than the national average, and high incomes do lead to the need for this to be recognized by society and by the economy. Perhaps there's a gap in that, and the BJP has, or whoever comes to power, has to address this when it comes to power.
Thanks so much for speaking with us, Aditi Fadnis. They're talking about those young voices who have actually made the narrative of the Gujarat election quite exciting. As Ayush said, it's always been about one party or the other. These three have added that much more excitement to the elections, and that's why we have a primetime debate special for you this evening. We've managed to speak to all three. That's right, Alpesh Thakur, Jignesh Mevani and Hardik Patel. We've spoken to them over the last couple of days and tried to figure out who these young leaders are, why they have garnered so much excitement among sections of the youth in Gujarat, and why they have chosen to push their luck with the Congress party. So do stay tuned for that primetime debate show coming up ahead. Now, Indian markets ended the week on a strong note on the back of gains in oil marketing and FMCG stocks. The Sensex and Nifty clocked gains of nearly 1%. Broader markets matched the benchmark and ended with strong gains.
The Central Board of Direct Taxes has extended the deadline for linking the permanent account number with one's Aadhaar to the 31st of March next year. This is the third time that the deadline is being extended after earlier targets in August and most recently the 31st of December this year. A CBDT circular says the move to extend the deadline was taken as taxpayers have not yet completed the linkage of PAN with Aadhaar.
Now, the government recently informed the Supreme Court that it is willing to extend the deadline for linking Aadhaar to various social welfare schemes and services such as bank accounts and mobile numbers up to March 31st next year. However, the extension would only be for new Aadhaar accounts and only if the hearing in the main Aadhaar matter extends beyond the current deadline.
All right, on to the biggest global story of the day. The UK and the European Union struck a deal to unlock Brexit negotiations. A deal was sealed before dawn in Brussels after talks went through the night. While the EU said it had given ground, Prime Minister Theresa May conceded on all the main issues: financial settlement, an agreement on Europeans living in the UK, and a solution to keep open the border that divides the island of Ireland after the split.
Millions of jobs depend on the future trading relationship we will determine, and I'm optimistic about the discussions ahead. But in the meantime, reaching this agreement now ensures that businesses will be able to make investment decisions based on an implementation period that offers welcome certainty.
On the basis of the mandate which was given to me by the European Council, the Commission has just formally decided to recommend to the European Council that sufficient progress has now been made on the strict terms of the divorce. The decision on sufficient progress will be in the hands of the 27 heads of state or government. I'm hopeful, confident, sure that they will share our appraisal and allow us to move on the next phase of the negotiations.
Well, Jones Hayden of Bloomberg News joins us from Brussels now. Jones, thanks so much for joining us on the show. I want to start by understanding, if you could actually start off by highlighting, well, the key takeaways from this deal and what it means for the region.
Well, the main thing here is that they've crafted a deal that will allow the Brexit talks to move on to the next phase, so that they can include talking about the future trade relationship, and they can talk about the transition period that is going to be needed once the UK leaves the EU in March of 2019. So that's the big good takeaway. In terms of the specifics of what they've agreed on the three key withdrawal issues, there's not a lot of detail. They've been able to craft this text in a way that the DUP, the party in Northern Ireland, who wants the Northern Ireland to remain a key part, a solid part of the UK, that they're happy. They've crafted it so that the government in Dublin is happy. So they've done it in a way that they can get to that next bit. But the details of exactly, for instance, how they are going to make Ireland work, how they're going to keep from having a hard border on Ireland, those details are going to have to be crafted in the next 2 years.
Right, Jones, and you know, a key point of contention really has been, well, the millions of people from the EU living in the UK, and then, of course, all of them the other way around as well. What I want to understand from you is that seemed to be one of the major sticking points when it came to Brexit. Under this new agreement, what will be the fate of these people, either living in the EU from the UK or living in the UK from the EU?
Right. This was one of the big issues that needed to be solved, and this is a point where the EU has actually given some ground. The UK has done most of the concession making in coming to this agreement, but here, when you talk about how the European Court of Justice is going to have jurisdiction over the rights of the citizens who are going to remain in the UK after Brexit, the EU side has given a little ground. They wanted it to be complete jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, but now they've said you just have to have referral to the Court of Justice. So the case law of the EU is going to be there, and it's going to be law, but the UK judges will interpret it. So it's not as forceful, it's not as strong as the EU was pushing for at the beginning. But they've already seen that there's some problems with this, with the way that they've worded it, because for British citizens living in the EU, it sounds as if they are not going to have freedom of movement after Brexit. They'll only be able to be in the country that they currently reside in. And that, of course, is much less freedom than they have at this moment.
It's interesting because, well, the question of Northern Ireland, you know, is still far from being over, right? At the end of the day, the leader of the Northern Irish Party, that holds the balance of power in London, really, said that, you know, the lawmakers could still vote down a final Brexit deal if they're not happy. Would you say that's a major pressure point for Theresa May?
I think for everybody, but they know that going in. You know, what today is about really is getting to the next phase of the negotiations, and Northern Ireland, the Irish situation, is a key part of whatever trade agreement they come to for the post-Brexit period, because that, you know, that's the one land border that the UK will have with the EU. So that's a very crucial part of whatever trade agreement they come to. And I think people on both sides have realized that you can't, you know, get all the details of how you preserve that frictionless border in Ireland without, you know, worrying about all the rest of the trading arrangements. So that's what they've done. They've kind of, you know, done this semi-fuzzy kind of language to say, you know, we can agree on this and then we'll work out the details going forward. But Arlene Foster, the leader of the DUP party in Northern Ireland, was very clear that they reserve the right to veto the whole thing down the road if they're not happy with the details.
Absolutely, Jones. There's a very quick last question. You know, I just want to understand what's really next. What's the way forward? Because I'd imagine all the EU countries have to sign off on the agreement next week at a summit.
Right, that's the one initial step, and that seems that they will do that. It's hard to imagine that once we've had this big breakthrough today, that the leaders would not follow through and agree that sufficient progress has been achieved to move on to the next phase of the negotiations. In fact, the EU has already sent out to the countries the points for the transition, the negotiations on the transition arrangement, and just a broad outline of what they're going to see, what they want to see in terms of a trade agreement. So the EU is already preparing itself for that transition, and in January we should start talking about the transition period and just broadly about the trade agreement that they will have to put in place. But remember, you've got less than 2 years before the UK leaves the EU, and that's really not enough time to do a proper trade agreement. So they're going to have to focus on the transition arrangement and get that in place in order to then do the trade deal.
Jones, thanks so much for joining us on Bloomberg Quint. Really appreciate those updates. Now, moving on, the US economy created 228,000 jobs in November, while the unemployment rate held steady at 4.1% at a 17-year low. It is the lowest jobless rate since February of 2001. The number of unemployed persons was essentially unchanged at 6.6 million. Well, the Delhi government has cancelled the license of Max Hospital at Shalimar Bagh. The hospital has been in the eye of the storm after a premature baby was declared dead, only to be found alive later by its parents. The baby later died at a private clinic in Pitampura.
This is such a horrific story, Ayush, but of course more details of it will emerge. The Aam Aadmi Party government in Delhi, though, has taken a strong stand on the hospital. We have to take a very short break, but quick reminder, Primetime debate up next, where we've spoken to all three of those young Turks. Hardik Patel, Alpesh Thakur, Jignesh Mevani. Will they make all the difference to the Congress? Are they representing the X factor? Here are those conversations up next.